I'm going to teach you what every status effect means in Dead by Daylight. There are so many different things that you need to learn when you're playing Dead by Daylight, such as perks, add-ons, items, and even status effects. That's why I'm here, and I'm going to make a few videos to show you all the different status effects and how they work. Blindness is a debuff that can be applied to both survivors and killers, which prevents them from being able to read any auras, including gens, hooks, hook survivors, as well as those applied by perks such as Kindred or Barbecue and Chili. Broken is a debuff applied to survivors only, which prevents them from being able to be healed or heal themselves past the injured state. Exhausted is a debuff exclusive to survivors, which prevents them from using any exhaustion perks. It can be applied by the exhaustion perks themselves after being used to prevent chaining such perks in quick succession, or it can be applied by the killer using perks or add-ons to prevent survivors from using these perks to begin with. This status slowly recovers over time while the survivor is not running. Exposed is a debuff that is exclusive to survivors. It means survivors will suffer from double damage when hit with a basic attack, immediately putting them in the dying state from the healthy state. This can be prevented if the survivor has the endurance status effect, which would put them in the deep wound state instead. Endurance is a buff for survivors only. With this effect, survivors can resist damage from the killer, meaning when the survivor is injured but hit while in the endurance effect, the survivor will instead be put into a deep wound state, where they'll need to mend before a timer runs out to return back to the injured state. This endurance effect is cancelled when a survivor performs a conspicuous action, such as repairing a gen or healing. If a survivor is already in the deep wound state, this endurance effect will not prevent them from being down. Deep Wound is a debuff exclusive to survivors. It is often triggered by a survivor being hit while under the endurance status effect, and gives a special health bar that progressively drains when the survivor is not running or mending. To get out of this deep wound state, the survivor must complete a mending action before the timer runs out. If the timer runs out, the survivor is automatically put into the dying state. Hindered is a debuff that can be applied to both survivor and killers. Players under this effect have their movement speed decreased. Examples of perks that do this are Chemical Trap for survivors and Forced Hesitation for killers. Haste is a buff that's applicable to both survivors and killers. This increases the player's movement speed. It can be done using perks such as Sprint Burst, or with killer powers such as Clown's Yellow Bottles. Incapacitated is a debuff exclusive to survivors, which is not seen very often. It prevents them from being able to interact with certain objects or other survivors. Some objects that you cannot interact with are totems and gens, as well as not being able to use items. Mangled is a debuff only to survivors. It causes survivors to take 25% longer to be healed by reducing their healing speed by 20%. This only applies from the injured state to healthy, not from dying state to injured. The Hemorrhage status effect is a debuff exclusively to survivors. It causes them to produce more pools of blood and thus making them easier to track by the killer. There is also another effect which causes survivors to lose any partial healing progress at a rate of -7% a second if their healing is interrupted and not fully completed. If you have any questions, please feel free to let me know in the comments, or you can come over to my Twitch when I'm streaming live and you can ask me any questions you like over there.